welcome to PsychAnalysis. It's really good to see you here again. My name is Dr. Vic Counted. I'm a psychological scientist and university professor. If teaching psychology, if you're joining us for the first time, please do make sure that you subscribe to this channel to watch more videos like this. Psychanalysis, really, it's our way of seeing the world through the lens of psychology, as we offer psychological case analysis of everyday people. So I'm hoping that you enjoy your time today, especially in this episode as we look at the Ukrainian president. Essentially, we just want to understand his psychological courage, his courage in the face of danger, and see what we can learn from the psychology of courage. So stay tuned. And also, I want to say this, that I'm not particularly conducting any clinical diagnosis of Mr. Zelenskyy, since I don't personally know him, but I can speculate about his behavior, his actions, and perhaps offer some insight into the psychology of courage. A little bit about Mr. Zelenskyy. Mr. Zelenskyy was born in 25th January 1978. He's currently the Ukrainian president. He was a former actor and also a comedian. Quite an astonishing feat for a man to have within his lifetime, and yet he's not even up to 50. Amazing. He gained worldwide recognition as a wartime leader recently, just this week and last week, during the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Zelenskyy grew up in a Russian-speaking city, and the city is in eastern part of Ukraine. He has a Jewish origin, and like many Soviet Jews, his parents were highly educated, but sort of limited due to the socioeconomic condition, socio-racial conditions at that time. And his father was a professor of mathematics. His mother studied engineering in school. And so Mr. Zelenskyy had sort of, in recent time, he has inspired Ukrainians to fight for his country. I'm going to come back about his parents, because we could see how the courage there of the parents to withstand the Soviet Union persecution of Jews at that time, how that courage sort of helped, was sort of nurtured in Mr. Zelenskyy, and we see him demonstrating that today. But recently we've heard about Mr. Zelenskyy inspiring many Ukrainians and even a lot of world leaders to fight, particularly for Ukrainians to fight for their country, but also for outsiders, for world leaders, for non-Ukrainians. Also inspired us, or people, to sort of see Ukraine as a victim of aggression against Russia, as a victim of aggression, fighting bravery for their independence and their freedom and also their democracy. And we see this man's decision to remain in his capital city of Kiev while the city was still under, and his family's decision to stay in Ukraine has sort of moved a lot of world leaders, a lot of people, to admire his courage and his bravery, particularly in contrast to the Afghan leader that fled when the Taliban group were actually were trying to take over his government. But this man sort of stood his ground and wanted to fight alongside the Ukrainian army. But in Zelenskyy, I believe that we see a man that has shown great bravery in the face of danger. Aside from him and the team making good use of the social media to kind of promote what they're doing and showing their resilience on the streets of Kiev, I believe that Mr. Zelenskyy's response to the U.S. When he was offered to be extracted for safety, it's amazing. He actually said that he does not need a ride, that he needs an ammunition. And I think that will likely go down in history. He will likely be remembered well, and history will remember him well, whether or not he survives this attack or not. I believe that this response and his action to stay in Kiev, to stay in his country, to fight with his army in the face of danger, have sort of inspired world leaders to do more for Ukraine. And we see those responses coming this week, some providing ammunition and supporting the nation of Ukraine as they are trying to fight an enemy that is trying to invade their country. I think in Mr. Zelenskyy, I see a man with a great courage. Let me talk a bit more about what I see with him and what might be happening with him. In psychology, there are two to three types of courage. We have physical courage, we have moral courage. The combination of these two kind of starts with psychological courage. Two of this, it's more internal, one is external. But I'm coming to the definition of this keyword. I think that Mr. Zelenskyy seems to have exhibited physical courage in his response to the invasion from Russia. Physical courage really is characterized by overcoming a fear of death or physical harm. And of course, we see the fact that Mr. Zelenskyy had responded to the offer from the U.S. to equip him with ammunition to fight his invaders, that he does not need a ride. That definitely is the greatest, shows great courage. It shows great courage. It shows great courage in significant way. And I think the fact that he was able to stand his ground might also point us to the second form of courage, which is moral courage. Because for him to stand his ground, it takes a lot of integrity to do that. I believe that both moral and physical courage sort of go hand in hand. And we've seen this in Mr. Zelenskyy's response to the invasion of Russia. Instead of taking a leave of absence at office, he stood his ground to fight an invader. Of course, he was able to do that because of the moral courage that he had not to let people to suffer or die without him being at the forefront, without him leading them, which then reinforced his physical courage to put himself at the forefront, even if it means he lost his life. But I think both moral courage and physical courage, it's underpinned by a psychological courage, which the psychological courage, it's a strong predictor of integrity, bravery, and persistence. In other words, what I mean here is that the psychological courage that's been demonstrated by Mr. Zelenskyy has sort of made him a person of integrity. And of course, this integrity might be grounded due to the moral courage that he had not to fail his people. But this I want to point out, this moral courage might also have been nurtured in him, because remember that the parents actually were living in Russia, in USSR, in the Soviet Union, at a time when Jews were persecuted. And the fact that they didn't think about fleeing to America or to a neighboring country where they would be well welcomed as Jews might have actually inspired Zelenskyy's actions today. So of course that brings back this debate about nurture versus nature, psychology, which I think what is happening, it's possible that the way that Mr. Zelenskyy was nurtured by the parent, nurtured to withstand danger despite the threats or the whatever that might be happening, to be a person of integrity in times of crisis, in times of danger. That in itself might have actually contributed to the response that we are seeing today in Mr. Zelenskyy, who has shown great courage and bravery. But also, I think not only does courage lead to not only does courage lead to integrity, courage also leads to bravery. Because when you have moral courage, that kind of supports your physical courage, which then enables you to stand out, to be brave, because the motivating factor for you is the moral values upon which you're fighting for. And that's what we see with this guy who has great moral courage, and that has enabled him to put himself on the line. And not just that, the other thing that courage leads to, it's persistence. When you are courageous, it reinforces your persistence level, your level of persistence. And I think that this is where Mr. Zelenskyy is at the moment, where he's trying to remain persistent as he pushes back against Russia's invasion. And at the heart of it all, it's, I guess, the need to take ownership and to control, and to take ownership and to take control over the fights within and without. And I believe that with Mr. Zelenskyy, he's not just fighting Russia, but also he's drawing on the strength, the moral strength that's been imbued in him by the parents. And he's also fighting both external and internal fights, but fights past and present. And the fact that the parents were able to withstand persecution and racism at the time of the Soviet Union, where Jews were considered subhumans. The fact that they stood their ground and raised this man today to be courageous, it's amazing. And I believe that it all ties to his persistence level. And I hope that for the sake of the people of Ukraine, that President Zelensky's courage, that his courage will give him back the control that he really truly deserves, so that he can inspire more of its people to be courageous, because I think he's worth admiring. And I'm hoping that we pick one or two things from his psychology of courage, and how that could be nurtured, but at the same time how moral courage can lead to physical courage, which can enable us to be brave and help us to be persistent, so that we can take back control of whatever that it's almost out of our reach. Thank you for watching PsychAnalysis. Please feel free to drop comments and let me know how you feel about the things I've said today, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.